Good evening. You are all very welcome here tonight. I'm Bernard Brady, the chair of the Theology Department here at St. Thomas, and I have had the good fortune over the past 4 years to be involved in a Muslim-Christian dialogue between my colleagues at St. Thomas and my new colleagues from Dokul Aluz University in Izmir, Turkey. We have had a series of dialogues where we've traveled there and they've come here. In January 2012 was the first event that several of us went to Izmir. We then invited them the following year, January 2013. Both years we had fruitful discussions about interesting moral and theological ideas in Islam and Christianity. We did make a little mistake, though, that second time, inviting people who live in the Mediterranean to come to Minnesota in January was not the best decision that we made. We went back the following January, and instead of them coming here this coming January, they're here now in November. We're delighted to have them. Over the weekend, we had our dialogue all day Saturday and all day Sunday, where we exchanged academic papers on the topic of peace and peace building and war in Christianity and Islam. What this evening is about is a short elements of their ideas, their contributions to academic discussion on this area. So I'm delighted to have them here in this public event tonight. I'll introduce them to you. First, we have the Dean of the School of Divinity, Professor Omar Dumlu. Next to me is Professor Ismail Ajar. Professor Zia Zen is second from the end. And at the end is Professor Hakan Gandolagdu. In the middle is Professor Adil Ozdemir, who's from Dokul Aluz, who's been on our faculty here at St. Thomas for 10 years now, I think, isn't it, Adil? Our format of this evening will be, we'll hear from each of our distinguished colleagues for 10 minutes, and I'm going to be mean Dr. Brady and give them 10 minutes, and then we'll have plenty of time for conversation and discussion. So I'll begin with my colleague, Dr. Ajar.
Good evening, everybody. So we had a good 2 days with the professors, St. Thomas University, and the professors from Dokul Aluz University. So what can we do for peace as professors? We teach. But what we can teach in terms of peace? So in terms of teaching, to do something good for peace, it would be better to teach, especially in Islam, the correct interpretation, the understanding of Islam as it is. So my subject is jihad in Islam and war. So how these two relates each other? Is there any differences between these two, or they are the same? After invasion of Westerners to the Muslim land, the jihad issue changed in Muslims' mind. So right now, it is not the jihad understanding. What do you hear here in the United States, in Muslim land? It is somehow corrupted understanding of jihad. So it is translated, for example, as holy war in English, which does not reflect the whole meaning of jihad. Because in Islam, jihad has many dimensions. Yeah, the first one. Here, for example, jihad has intellectual. A Muslim can do intellectual jihad. In Meccan period, Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad, received a verse which tells him do jihad with the Quran. In Mecca period, before he established his state, he did not find a place to live in a security. His life was in danger. At that time, God asked him to do jihad. So what does it mean? Do jihad with the Quran. So which means, for me, it is an intellectual one. The second, individual. So Muslim scholars, they emphasize on this, the individual jihad. Jihad should be done first by the person. Inner jihad, to do something against selfish desires, worldly desires. It should be, the greedy, for example, should be controlled by the person. And this is also considered jihad. I would like to read a hadith, Prophet Muhammad, which tells these kinds of jihad. Jihad consists of 10 units. 9 of them are related to seeking permissible, halal, and money earned legitimately to support his family and to give to the people in need, infaq. So this is, sorry about, I made a mistake. This is the third one. I read the third one. Since the professor emphasized at the very beginning, you have just 10 minutes, I made a mistake. I read the third one. So the hadith that I read, it is related to the third one. The second one, let me read right now the second one, a hadith, Prophet Muhammad. The best jihad is speaking a word of justice to a tyrannical ruler. So this is individual one. So a Muslim, if he sees something wrong intellectually, he should speak against this injustice, even though even the person has a really high hierarchy. It doesn't matter. So I already talked about the property one. So at the middle, you see at the middle, war and jihad, just a caressing connection with arm. It is 1/4 of jihad related to the war. So you made a mistake. Sorry, I am this. So this left side should be jihad and right side should be war. Why it is like this, I don't know. Something happened. It's in my paper. Sorry about this confusion. It is not in my paper, but something happened. Okay. So you see on the top of war, it should be jihad on the left side. On the right, it should be war. The crossing points, 1/4 of it is related with war. So just go to the, just a second, please. Okay, just come back. So come back. Okay, so war, this side is war. War has its own rules in Islam. Go right now, so you see, you saw it. So the connection point, even inside the connection point, so only Muslims who join a legal battle with a great intention for the sake of Allah, then the person on the eyes of God will be considered a doer of jihad. But it is still an eschatological problem we do not know in this world. It will be clear by end of the day. It will be clear in the day of judgment. So, what is relation all these with the peace? So if we teach our community something wrong with the jihad understanding, then it may create something really big problems all over the world. So jihad is not war. Only very small portion, 25% of is related to the war, and inside the war, not everybody's action considered as a jihad. It's really related to personal issue. It is really related to the intention of a Muslim. Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya, one of the great scholars from medieval period, he says that a Muslim should inner jihad first, should cleanse his worldly desires, should control his worldly desires, and then he may do outer jihad. Then he may do the jihad that we understand right now generally, to bring message other people or to do what it is necessary. Okay? So right now, it will be better to understand war and jihad issues from the very early source of Islam to establish peace, to help peace as a professor of Islamic law. So we should teach Islam as it is. It should not be used as a tool to reach a certain goal of a group. So this is the problem of right now, from my perspective, from my understanding, from my subject. When you say jihad, it always comes to mind killing people. This is not the case. Some Muslims also, they think like this, unfortunately. They do not know the real, what the jihad is, and then so it creates some problems in bigger picture.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Dean?
Evet, şimdi koyayım. Esselamu Aleyküm ve Rahmetullah.
Peace be with you all.
Şimdi benim konuşmam da bu selamla konuşmama selamla başlamak istiyorum.
I will start my talk with this greeting.
Zira konuşmamın konusu barış,
Because the
esenlik.
topic of my talk is peace.
Zaten selam vermekle de şunu demek istiyorum. Benden size bir zarar gelmez.
The meaning of the peace, giving the peace,
Siz de
the
karşıdan-
greeting
siz-
is that I am safe, that
siz
you
de-
are safe with me.
Siz de karşıdan bana ve aleykümselam dediğiniz vakitte
When you respond in kind,
ki görüyorum zaten halinizden de bunu anlıyorum.
and that appears,
Siz de adeta bana diyorsunuz ki benden de size, bizden de size bir zarar
and
gelmez.
you also say to me, give me the message that you are safe with us.
Hazreti Peygamber yani Hazreti Muhammed bir sözünde şöyle
The
buyuruyor.
Prophet, in one of his hadith saying, said,
Efşü's selame beyneküm.
spread peace between you, amongst you.
Yani buradaki selam esenlik demek, barış demek.
This word of greeting, it means peace and tranquility.
İslam bütün dinlerin özel adı, genel adı olarak Kur'an-ı Kerim'de ifade edilir.
Islam is the name of the religion of Islam.
Ama özel olarak
Is
da
the
son dinin adı da İslam'dır.
So, the religion with God, the primordially, is peace, and the Islam, the religion of Muslims, is also considered peace. Is named peace.
Kur'an-ı Kerim'de bu barış kavramını üç şekilde ele almak mümkündür.
Peace has three aspects. It is understood in three ways, basically.
Birisi Allah'ın insanlardan söz alması, barış yapması.
First is the covenant that God has taken from the human beings.
Ve bu Kur'an-ı Kerim'in birçok ayetinde yer almıştır.
And this takes place, is mentioned in different parts of the Quran.
Yani adeta Allah insanlarla barış imzalamış demektir.
As if Allah has made a written agreement with humanity.
Bu şekilde olanların da mutlak surette cennete, yani Allah'ın barışına uyanların da mutlaka cennete gideceği ifade edilir.
And Quran says those who observe that covenant will go to paradise, to heaven.
İkincisi ise kullar arasında, insanlar arasındaki barışı ifade eder.
The second meaning means a peace between humanity, among human beings.
Bu barışta Allah dışta tutulmaz.
And in this form of peace, Allah is not also external.
Yine emreden Allah'tır.
Still, the one who commands this peace is Allah, is God.
Barışı yapacak olanlar da biz insanlardır.
But those who will practice and apply this peace is we, human beings.
Bu kavramlardan birisi biraz önce üzerinde durduğum İslam kavramıdır.
One of these concepts is the concept of Islam.
Çünkü İslam, selam, Allah'ın özel isimlerinden birisidir.
It's interesting that one of the many beautiful names of God, the attributes of God, is itself peace.
Yani Allah lisan-ı hal ile bize şöyle demektedir.
As if Allah is saying to us,
Ben sizlerden razıyım
I am pleased with you
ve benden size bir zarar gelmez.
and you are safe with me.
Sizler de benim buyruklarıma uyun.
And you also observe my rulings, my commands.
Bir yönü de insanlar arasındaki barıştır. Yine selam bir yönüyle de insanlar arasında barışı
Salam
ifade eder.
in another sense is a peace among human beings.
Biraz önce söylediğim gibi sadece basit manada karşılıklı olarak birbirimize selam verdiğimiz vakitte bu anlamı söylemiş
At the
oluruz.
surface, it is initially is just the greeting as we share. among
Çünkü
us.
İslam'ın manası boyun eğmek, itaat etmek, barışmak demektir.
The meaning of peace here is to obey,
İtaat etmek.
obey and surrender and submit to God.
Evet. Çünkü İslam dini barış dinidir.
Islam is the religion of peace. This is the general, the essential meaning.
Ve zaten Allah katında bütün dinlerde de barış esastır.
And in fact, in all religions, the essential message is peace.
Yani mesela tarihi seyri içerisine baktığınız vakitte Hazreti İbrahim'den şöyle bahsedilir.
For example, the Quran is talking about Ibrahim, peace be upon him, as follows.
Ma kana İbrahimu Yahudiyen ve la Nasraniyen velakin kana hanifen Müslima.
Ibrahim, in fact, was not a Jew or a Christian, but he was someone who submits to God, surrenders to God,
Ve ma kana minel müşrikin.
and he was not an idolater.
Müşrikin, o şirk koşan da değildir. Bu da bize gösteriyor ki Hazreti İbrahim'den sonra gelen bütün dinlerin önemli üzerinde durduğu nokta Müslüman olmalarıdır.
So all prophets that followed Ibrahim, their essential point was peace.
İnsanlar arasında barışı ifade eden kavramlardan birisi de sulhtür.
Another term, key term in the Quran meaning peace is a term called sulh.
Bu sulh aynı zamanda savaşan iki milletin, iki devletin veya birçok devletlerin arasında da yapılan tam savaşın zıttı olan barıştır.
It means peace agreement between the fighting nations.
Hatta Kur'an-ı Kerim'de iki savaşan topluluğu gördüğünüz vakitte onların arasını bulun barıştırın denmektedir.
Quran says that if two groups of Muslims even are fighting, just make peace between them.
Yani iki grup savaştığı vakitte, iki devlet savaştığı vakitte bir seyirci olarak dışarıdan kalınmasını Kur'an istememektedir.
And do not just stay indifferent to that, but be involved and engaged and to make peace and an agreement between those fighting groups and parts.
Çünkü savaş yıkım demektir.
Because war is destruction.
Çünkü savaş ölüm demektir.
Because it means death.
Çünkü savaş milletlerin arasında nefretin çoğalması demek.
because it leads to the increase of hatred among people.
Ama barış ise zulmü kaldırmak demektir.
But peace is ending war and
Savaşan toplumlar arasında mutlak surette sulhu, barışı ve güvenliği sağlamak demektir.
it means to make peace between those fighting people and end the war and destruction and hatred and hostility.
Kur'an-ı Kerim'de bu kavram, sulh kavramı aynı zamanda karı ile koca arasında, yani eşler arasında barışın temininde de
The
kullanılmıştır.
same term
Kur'an-ı
of
Kerim'de.
peacemaking, sulh, is also used among the couples, spouse and the two spouses.
Yani iki eş arasında bir anlaşmazlık olduğu vakitte mutlaka onları bulup barıştırmamız gerektiği vurgulanır.
So God asks us that if there is a disagreement between couple, so Allah advises and asks that the two should be bridged and made peace between them.
Üçüncüsü ise insanın kendisiyle barışık olmasıdır.
And the third meaning is peace within oneself, within the person himself.
Yani
herself.
bugün belki en çok sıkıntı çektiğimiz noktalardan birisi de kişinin kendisiyle barışık olmaması.
Maybe one of the biggest points, questions today is that human being is not at peace with oneself.
Kendisiyle barışık olması demek iç huzur demektir.
That means the inner tranquility and inner peace.
İç huzur sağlandığı takdirde o zaman kişi mutlu olmaya başlar.
And that is the beginning of happiness.
Hem kendisiyle hem çevresiyle.
And that happiness spreads to the environment, to the
Yani hem
family, to
dünyanın
society.
neresinde olursa olsun mutlak surette barışı kendisi yaşamaya başlar.
So wherever the person is, begins to live and practice that peace and that tranquility.
Evet, konuşacak çok şey var ama Bernie bitti diyor.
I have the sign now, although we have so much
Yapacağım
things to talk
yapacağım
about.
bir şey yok. Hepinize hayırlı akşamlar diliyorum.
So greetings again. Good evening. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I also greet you with the name of Allah, God, with all the good will and wishes of peace and security, safety. I want to talk here a little bit of my humble personal journey. So I want to talk what we can do about peacemaking, what can we do. Instead of talking about general things, just I want to share my humble journey. I am 62 now, so I can't believe how time passed so fast. But about 40 years now, I have been in teaching. So it has been a blessing that for so long I have been with my students. And thousands and thousands of students I met and talked and taught, etc. I have also, since 1980, I've been involved in interfaith dialogue with Americans, with Christians, starting with in Turkey, and then spreading out to the United States. So with Protestants, liberals, with very conservative, born-again Christians, and now with in a Catholic institution, a school, university, I've been practicing dialogue and interfaith understanding. I don't know how this happened. I don't know how this happened. It will take time to, but there is something going on in my life that my teaching of Islam, of the Quran, for so many years, probably was preparing me to understand what my faith is. In the beginning, while I was teaching, I was not aware. I was teaching Islam, reading, but until, I would say, I came to be engaged in dialogue, I was not aware of what the religion really means and what Islam is and what is the message there. So what I'm trying to say is that the dialogue, meeting with people of other faiths, and even meeting with people of no faiths, because I've been involved, I've been in Harvard Divinity School in a very liberal setting, with moderners in my own country, in Turkey, with the seculars, and with religious people, with the people of seminaries. Those people, talking with those people, helped me grow an awareness of what Islam means, what religion means, what is the meaning of that. So I can now say that without that dialogue, without that encounter, without those many questions that I was faced over the years with my colleagues, without the experience of explaining, trying to explain my faith myself, I would not come to understand neither my faith nor myself. So the whole meaning, I can with all confidence say that dialogue, interfaith conversation helped me to discover, rediscover my own religion. Now, having said that, I want to come to a point. This interfaith dialogue, all this interfaith experience, interreligious, intercultural experience, has led me to think and believe that religion is peace. That is the goal. And peace is possible only when we enter into a relationship with one another. So Islam is peace, and Islam is given to bring peace. And from that experience, I look back to the Quran, and I find nothing but peace as a call from God, as a call to peace. And I look back to what the Prophet did was a peacemaking. He, in his career in Mecca, he called people to peace with God and with other people. In Medina, when he came to Medina, what he did was establishing peace between Jews and Christians and even idolaters and Muslims. So Medina, what he did in Medina was establishing peace. He was an arbiter and a reconciler. That's what the Quran was given to him to do this job. And that's what he was doing. He was trying to do the peace between peoples. He was not. The message for him was just to realize, to bring that peace. So this is kind of legacy to the followers of the Prophet over the centuries. What we see in the Islamic history, long history, there are good periods in the Islamic history that Muslim communities try to bring about a society that also helped coexistence and a culture of living together. So that was a legacy of the Quran and the Prophet as a model that Muslims, like in Spain, like in Damascus of the time, and Baghdad of the time, and in Istanbul and the Ottoman, I mean, they had good examples of living together with people of different faiths. Jews, Christians of different denominations, and Muslims of different sects, they were able to live together. So that is, again, what Islam had produced, what the Prophet left behind us. So that is the legacy that probably from my own culture and maybe with God's mysterious hands, I was put into this path that through this experience, I came to realize that Islam, my religion, like other religions, is the way to peace. So what to get out of this? What can I say to this? What I can suggest that we can do for peace? Well, to be witnessing to our own faiths, to be good witnesses, good testimonies. And when we become true believers in our religions, we be also peaceful people and peacemakers. So, with that, I remain. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. This evening, I will speak about the war in the Quran. War is ancient as much as the history of the man, and thus it should be considered as natural. Activities like dominating other rulings, seizing one's property and prosperity, colonizing and avoiding the spread of divine message among people have been existed through the history and appeared. The struggle between good and evil. Thus, in order to prevent oppression and persecution and to provide the safety of man, Islam has legitimized armed struggle under specific conditions. Islam takes non-Muslims and the people of book under the protection as far as it does for Muslims, and tries to eliminate any attacks to non-Muslims under its rule. For example, the verse, "If God didn't repel some people by means of others, many monasteries, churches, synagogues, and mosques where God's name is much invoked would have been destroyed," shows the importance of respect to sanctuaries of people of the book and necessity of protecting them from any attack. In other words, Muslims have to protect the temples of Christians and Jews as they cover their own mosques. In the Quran was forbidden by more than 20 verses. Due to the minority of Muslims population and their weakness in terms of power, war against infidels was absolutely not allowed for Muslims despite experiencing heavy tortures. The Muslims, being subject to polytheists, oppression and attacks despite leaving Mecca, would have the right to fight against enemy with the following verse of Surah Al-Hijrah in the first year of Hijrah. Those who have been attacked are permitted to take up arms because they have been wronged. According to verse, as the reason for fighting, it is obviously state the attacks of hostile to Muslims and the expelling of Muslims from their homeland. However, the following verse has converted the permission of countering the attacks of enemy to Muslims into obligation for Muslims. Fight in God's cause against those who fight you, but don't overstep the limits. God doesn't love those who overstep the limits. It makes farce obligation war in an effort to defend under an attack. In other words, it gives the right of self-defense. Islam aims at people to live within the peace. It suggests punishment to those who prevent the safety and the felicity of society and prejudices public interest. It tries to dissuade this kind of groups or states conducting activities against social peace by beginning to fight. Thus, a war becomes legitimate in order to bring peace to all people and to create a pleasant and peaceful environment. According to Islam, men are principally innocent. Shedding blood of men is haram, forbidden. Islam never approves to escalate hostile relations in the name of personal interests, and never accepts illegitimate wars, and moreover, it condemns illegitimate wars. According to Islam, war is made only in the case of necessity. The protection of religious freedom takes place in the base of human rights. Thus, Islam doesn't consider war as a cold method for Islam, since it causes enmity and hatred among people. Islam presents widely freedom of religion and conscience to everyone, because it doesn't approve anyone to state his or her belief under oppression. Islam, unlike any other divine religious and civilian laws, has presented ethic and law of war in order not to cause cruel murders and not to outbreak of war based on secular reasons. I could briefly state the points that should be obeyed during the war as following. Not deserting the army, respecting human rights, fighting only against the warrior, not to civilians, not harming public goods and cultivated lands, accepting the offer of peace settlement. The understanding of war aiming at protecting basic human rights and freedom and living right initially and preventing any injustice gives Muslims the right and mission to fight against enemy under reasonable circumstances. Most of the Islamic jurists have emphasized that legitimate reason of war is the violation of enemy, that fighting against those who don't fight against Muslims and killing anyone because who is not embracing Islam are not acceptable. Islam considers war as legitimate for the people who were attacked and whose lives, goods, and honors were in danger. Also, it suggests not exceeding the limits, not mistreating to elders, women, and children during the war.
Okay, thanks so much. Okay. My point in the paper is to focus on individual responsibility, our individual role and responsibility in making peace and keeping peace. Okay, there is no so much time. Let's start. The matter of peace had never been only a political issue, but also a cultural, existential, and philosophical problem. For that reason, I want to say something about the nature of peace at first. If you get used to think the peace only with the war, you tend to feel a bit strange when you hear that there is no need to connect the concept of peace to the concept of war. As you know well, the concept of peace is usually considered with the concept of war. But this understanding, I think, creates some problems. At the point of seeing the real nature of peace, most of us cannot think peace without war, since our current environment in which we live tells us that the peace comes after a war. But this point of view doesn't help us to see the true nature of the peace. In fact, peace itself no needs any external support to exist or even sustain. Actually, we can easily think of peace without referring to war on the contrary of general understanding. Put it differently, peace can exist without war, although the reverse is not true. Why? Because war is a conditional act. The condition of warfare certainly needs peace, but peace is an unconditional situation. For example, you can keep peace with your neighbors, family members, friends, or other human groups, including other nations, without fighting them. However, if there is a fight with them, you should have a peace agreement to finish the fight. This latter understanding of peace is merely the result of negotiations and reflects an opinion of men enforcing and implementing positions of power. Here, the main point has been lost. In other words, it's a mistake to conceive of peace as a thing which exists after the action of war. Peace has a deep meaning. It's neither absence of strife or struggle, nor an inactivity coming after the action of war. On the contrary, peace, by its nature, is an action itself, not a thing after the action. Therefore, peace is a matter of action, and so continually requires fundamental readaptations to new conditions within both public and personal life, while living together with others in this world. From this point of view, peace is what we have to construct again and again by our actions. This is valid for such all kinds of peace, like intellectual, spiritual, social, cultural, and political peace. As long as we experience the war and anarchy in our globalized world, the need for peace and peaceful living will certainly increase and becomes visible in all ways. Nowadays, every day, we hear many terrible news about war and violence from mass media, and perhaps some of us may think that we have nothing to do with making better the situation. According to them, this is the job of the authorities, official or non-official authorities, not us, because it's a public, political, or maybe, let's say, governmental issue. Hence, they might say there is no need to look at what happens outside and to think upon what to do just as an individual. But it's not true. Conflicts leading to war is not only something happening among the governments, nations, or sometimes cultures, but something which we make in our individual daily choices. As a result of this, we all as individuals are somewhat, or in one sense, responsible for the war and violence. Because of that, I think, in order to have peace in the world, we need to have peace in our societies. And in order to have peace in our societies, we need to have peaceful individuals in our societies. Society is a mirror of the individual. This means that peace cannot exist in a society unless individuals have a peace within themselves. Similarly, world peace begins within you and then with you. If you are not at peace, if you are not at peace with yourself, not at peace with your neighbors, families, colleagues, and the people whom you see somewhat every day but ignore, how can we hope the world is at peace? What's more, if we judge the people against the war as pro-enemy at their hearts, how can we say we as Muslim, Christians, or Jews, or whoever we are not responsible for the terrible effect, terrible result of the war and violence? On the other hand, to put an end to war and violence is not a matter of passive protest. It's a matter of acting as a responsible individual. Our individual responsibility is to use whatever opportunity we have, whatever reach, whatever voice, whatever share of cultural conversation in eliminating reasons and causes leading to war and violence. To learn and critically think upon what really happened out there is our individual responsibility. Some people read the religious texts selectively to support their own ideas, own views, and this causes to lose the sense and the role of the concept of peace and the concept of war in religious people's lives. And for example, all the Quran supports the liberal principle of freedom of religion and consciousness. We hear very strange stories about people forced to convert to Islam. There is a verse in Quran, you have your religion and I have mine. If this was, these conversion actions, if this was really a universal principle of Islam, it would be very difficult to find real believer today, even real Muslim today, because it's another name of hypocrisy. And this is not faith that Islam demands from the people. In Islam, peace as well as faith begins with heart and goes on existing and sustaining with the support of reason and action. Without the help of the actions, especially the actions guided by reason and heart, neither peace nor faith can be fully achieved. The way to the universal peace is from the microcosm to the macrocosm, and not vice versa. Peace is realized first in the microcosm and only then in the macrocosm. Political peace is institutional, whereas spiritual peace is existential. The former is something to be established by social institutions, but the latter is founded upon the soul's ability to be, and consequently it's something to be realized inwardly. This kind of peace is referred in the Quran as the divine peace, sakina, which dwells in the human heart. To Sufis, according to Sufis and Muslim mystics, this peace is achieved only by coming together of the hearts as one. The tendency of violence can be truly decreased not by another violence, but only by the law of love. Preventing violence by violence merely produces a vicious circularity of the violence, and so it's not helpful to prevent the violence in the long run. Therefore, the best way toward the world peace is to gain peace by means of peace and not by means of war or violence. As Yunus Emre, Turkish mystic, very famous favorite Turkish mystic, remind us, sometimes even one single word heals the wounds, stops the war, and turns the hell into the paradise. But who can say this one single word to the people in need of hearing it? Answer may be found in the one of his existential and religious poems, inspired by the Muslim faith. He says, I am not here on earth for strife or struggle. I came here to build each true heart. And he goes on, come nearer, let's make peace. Come nearer, let's know each other. Indeed, knowing each other rightly, I think, is the best starting point to make and keep peace among the people and societies. If we really regard the peace as something worthwhile in itself, this immediately brings us an existential, individual responsibility on that point for peaceful world regardless who we are. However, we should never forget that the members of civilized world have much more individual responsibility than the others. Because civilized societies, by their nature, are the societies which are characterized by a deep concern for peace at all levels, not just only one levels. But in this very short speech, I just only focus on individual level. Thanks so much. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I've been hanging around theologians for many years now, and I've never heard theologians be so concise and so precise. There's deepness here in their short talks. We've heard then five sets of ideas in the last 50 minutes. The first, we heard the very important distinction between jihad and war in Islam. We've heard some conversation on the types of peace we see in Islam. We've heard about the deep meaning of peace for a believer. We heard about the moral rules of war in Islam and about individual responsibility for peace in Islam. We have some time here. We would welcome some questions from the group. We'd appreciate some direct and specific questions. And I was bragging to our guests how bright and enthusiastic St. Thomas students are and eager to engage people and ideas. So please come and show us how smart you are. Please. Just stand up if you want to come here. That'd be great. If you. Thank you.
So my question isn't directed to anyone, but oftentimes people just don't know how to find peace with themselves. Do you need to find peace with God first to find peace with yourself, or the other way around?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yoksa hangisi önce geliyor? Tamam.
It is said I can say in the Christian tradition and Islamic tradition that God initiates. And God initiates love, God gives guidance, God gives, who creates, so that's where it starts with God. But we respond. We human beings, we respond in kind. So that's why, where does it? So what we are to do from this perspective, we are just to be open. And we are just to be sensitive and hearing. That's what the Quran says, for example, hear. And that's in the Old Testament, in the New Testament, hear. Isma, hear. So, and give response. Egypt, istajibu. So that's how it, but maybe what we are to do, our duty is to try to understand ourselves, to go into our depths. So the more we go into ourselves, we hear the voice, because it is within us, embedded in us, inherent in us. Our creation, that love, that peace is already within us. So it's a rediscovering issue. It's within ourselves. It's an issue of rediscovering. But again, religiously, or as the teachings say, it is coming from God. That's my answer at this.
Others, please. Hakan?
God is not out there. Now God.
You're talking to the microphone, please. Thank you.
It's a very short answer. We can find God inside of us, not just out there, or any other places. No place. If we can't find God inside of us, we cannot him, or maybe her, with a different perspective, nowhere. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you.
Şimdi tabii bu soru aslında şuna benziyor bir noktada. Bir insanı düşünün. İnsanın bir derisi var. Bir de derinin içerisindeki organları var.
We have a skin and we have other members in the, of our body.
Onları birbirinden ayırdığınız vakitte insan diye bir şey kalmaz.
You cannot separate between our skin and our organs inside the skin.
Yani Kur'an-ı Kerim okuduğunuz vakitte zaten insanla Tanrı arasında ayıracak bir şey yoktur. Hangisi önce gelir diye bir şey yok. Çünkü insana Allah akıl vermiş ve ondan sonra da insanın bu aklı sayesinde kendi iç huzurunu bulmak durumunda olduğunu kitapları okuyarak, Kur'an-ı Kerim okuyarak bunu bulacağını söylemektedir.
it is the Quran, that Quran says that we discover God within us, and so it is hard to find out where it starts. I mean, it's within us coming out, or it's coming from outside toward inside.
Kur'an insana mümin demektedir.
Quran addresses the human being as a believer, as a
Mümin,
faithful.
mümin demek kendi içinde barışık olan,
And the believer means, to have faith means to make peace within the
kendisine
person.
güvenen,
And the one who trusts oneself.
Allah'ın da ismi mümin.
And Allah is also named as the believer, as
Onun
the
ikisinin
faithful.
arasındaki bu ilişkiyi böyle ayırarak bir yere varmak mümkün
And
değildir.
it's
Kur'an
hard,
açısından.
it's difficult to separate.
Ve dolayısıyla kendi içindeki barışıklık ister istemez dışa yansıyacaktır.
Therefore, peace within will come out
Evet.
to the outside.
We welcome more questions, please. Please come up. I'll read it. I'm going to say it in the mic. As a Muslim who goes to St. Thomas, that's your question? So you're asking a question about resources at St. Thomas and beyond St. Thomas to contribute to the peace in the world. So what would you say to her about resources or
Türkçe şey yapsa benim kendi doktora çalışmamı bilir okuması ama Türkçe değil, İngilizce değil.
Okay, so we do not know in St. Thomas, but there will be something in Turkish, but it doesn't work here, he says. So I can understand.
if I'm sorry, do you want to talk? So how could you rephrase the question?
Yeah.
So for people who are not familiar with St. Thomas to respond to you, I think you're talking about some deeper issues here about engagement in the world and relating to the world and being agents of peace in the world. Yes, is that? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
So how to bring together Muslims and non-Muslims in peace, these together. Yeah.
Okay. At St. Thomas, I personally have been teaching Introduction to Islam for the last 10 years. So this is, I see, a resource here at St. Thomas to start with. So I humbly invite you to, enroll in my class. So that's where we are establishing good understanding of Islam and Christianity in particular, but widely within religions, between religions. So, as I said in my earlier talk, that the whole process of dialogue and interfaith relationship is geared to help us to understand our own faith, our own religion, because the goal, the objective, and the purpose of Islam, which literally means peace, is to peace and to spread the peace. Now, because this is it just, I personally didn't talk about war, jihad, and war, and Islah. It is actually an action. So Islam is not talking only about teaching or preaching. The Prophet said, I seek refuge to Allah from a knowledge that does not benefit. So Islam is requiring an action, a peaceful action. Spread the action, spread the peace to the wider world. So what we can say, that's where we start, with taking a course and try to reading the Quran and the Prophet's Sunnah, Hadith example, learn about it, and then we develop in our course an appreciative understanding of our tradition. Because in the long tradition, there are good, parts of peacemaking and living together. So, discovering our own faith. But listening to our fellow, our friends in other faiths, listening to them and hearing how God speaks to them, how God is acting in them. So that's what I am doing. Sorry for talking about myself all the time, but I mean, I know that American people, as you appreciate the personal experience. I mean, that's it. Not so much. So I am learning about to say, normally in our tradition, it is not good to talk about me, I, etc. But in English, we can't speak without I, etc. So how we look so carefully and observe keenly how my fellow, co-religionists, how their religions speak to them, motivate them, and how religion is effective in their lives, how their religion is reforming their lives. So this is a very good environment. Being a Muslim in a dominantly non-Muslim environment, this is a very good impetus, motivation to learn about your faith.
Yani belki gecenin son sözü olarak şunu mu söylesem diye düşünüyorum. Ben kitabımı size göndereyim.
So I am happy to send my book on peace.
Siz de Türkçeyi öğrenin.
And I also encourage you to learn Turkish.
Ve onu İngilizceye çevirin.
And translate it into English.
Böylece çok hayırlı bir iş yapmış
And that
oluruz.
would be a good work.
Peki, iyi
A work
akşamlar
of
diliyorum.
peace.
İyi akşamlar.
Another question, please. Please.
Yes.
Good evening. You talked briefly about valid reasons for war, and you talked about being attacked, protecting others' rights, and then of course there are wars that have no motivation and are purely selfish and do not have any form of peace in them. Of course, America right now is involved in conflict in the Middle East. Do you view America as defending themselves, defending others, or do you view that war as something that's purely selfish and purely for our own personal agenda? And what about that? Because as an American, of course, I only have the American perspective. I don't have a different perspective from around the world. And so I, of course, only have my information through our media, which prefers to give us information that makes us seem like the good guys. But how do you guys see us in the world?
So their perception.
Would you mind just shortly summarizing the question? Basically, we will clarify. Yeah, rephrase it. Okay. Okay. Can I? Yeah. Can I address? Okay. How American engagement in war in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in say in other parts of the Islamic world, how is it seen? I would not give my own opinion, but I want to share with you how people there on the street think. Okay, it's not received well, I should say. You know, you go in someone else's territory and you invade, you know, or you help another country to occupy another country. And that is something that if it is done unto you, you would not accept it. You would not accept it. This is a common sense. This is very simple. I think it is understood. I think every human being sees that. So America is expected to act as it preaches. That means it preaches freedom, human dignity, human integrity, human rights, defending the peace in the world, leadership. All these values and good ideals, the modern ideals. This is what America is essentially believing. This is the commitment, this is the covenant. This is the covenant. But what the Muslim world sees, that almost there is something going just the opposite. Double standards, you know, preaching peace, you know, democracy, but sometimes supporting what? Dictatorship. Say, just the last instance is in Egypt. While the people, you know, chose democratically, that America promised them to support, but what it came out, it was just ended up supporting a dictator. A surprise. A surprise. I think how America is seen, it's not, I think, seen in a good way. This is, of course, not about American people. This has nothing to do with American people. But this is a policy. This is a policy, government policy. So people understand that. People understand that. People are intelligent enough to see the difference between the people of peace-loving, of democracy, of human rights, but lobbies, etc., interests, they understand that too. I think I can say this much.
Şimdi 1974 yılında Türkiye'de bir Kıbrıs meselesi yaşandı.
1974, we had an incident in Cyprus. We had a case.
Bu savaşta biz de o zaman genç, 20 küsur yaşlarında böyle kanımız kaynıyor.
I was young, about 20 some years old.
Bir hocamız vardı. Onun yanına da sürekli olarak gidip geliyoruz.
I used to
bazı
visit
şeyler
one of my
konuşuyoruz.
teachers then.
İşte hocam hemen gidelim, savaşalım,
And
şöyle yapalım
we
filan.
wanted to go join.
Dediğimizde bize şunu söyledi.
And
Savaşın
he said,
ne demek olduğunu biliyor musunuz
do
dedi.
you know what war means?
Türkçe'de bir söz vardır, bir atasözü gibi bir sözümüz vardır. Davulun sesi uzaktan güzel gelir.
The grass is always greener on the other side of the fence.
Ama yakından çaldığı vakitte insanı cidden rahatsız eder.
And likewise, the voice of the drum, when it beats near you, it hurts you.
Ya savaş nerede olursa olsun yıkımdır.
War is destruction, wherever it is.
Yani insanlar, devletler savaşmak için de bazen sebepler oluştururlar.
Sometimes some governments resort to that.
Yani bunu tasvip etmek mümkün değildir.
It's impossible to accept that destruction.
Orada bakın o kadar insan ölüyor ki yani insan sadece böyle film seyreder gibi karşıdan seyrediyoruz ama oradaki insanların neler çektiğini bir bilsek.
So many people die.
Yani
And
bakın Türkiye'nin hemen yanı başında Suriye'de de bir iç savaş var.
at the moment, Syria, hundreds of thousands of people are dying.
Yaklaşık 1,5 milyon insan da Türkiye'ye sığınmış durumda.
Just only 1.5 million Syrians took refuge in Turkey.
Yani hangi insan evinden olmak ister? Hangi insan yurdunu, yerini terk edip bir başka yere sığınmak
These
ister?
people had to leave their homes to
Peki,
another country.
peki sorulabilir ki yani bunun başka çözümü yok, savaştan başka çözümü yok diye sorulabilir belki.
Some might think that this is the only way, the war is the only choice.
Ama bunun tarihte de yaşamışızdır. Çok çeşitli çözüm yolları vardır.
In fact, there are other ways of dealing with disputes and questions.
Yani Allah hiçbir zaman için böyle bir yerlerde yaşamayı bizlere nasip etmesin diyelim.
I should pray that Allah saves us from such situations.
O insanları çok ciddi olarak düşünmemiz gerekir.
We should think of such people and their cases in our prayers always.
Tabii burada güçlü devletlere de çok iş düşmektedir.
And the responsibility goes back to the more powerful and so on and down.
Sadece yukarıdan bombalamakla bu işler bitmiyor.
And just using weapons and bombing doesn't help, doesn't solve any of the problems.
Yani başka çözümler üzerinde durulması gerekir diye düşünürüm.
I think we should find other ways to solve the problems.
Evet, inşallah yakında bu işler biter belki.
I hope
Dua edelim bitsin.
I hope we find other ways, peaceful ways.
Evet, teşekkür ederim. Thank you.
Thank you very much. When you tell your friends and neighbors and colleagues that you're coming to the United States for a Muslim-Christian dialogue, are they all supportive and happy and well-wishing? Are some curious of why you would be involved in discussions with Christians or why you would go to the United States to do this thing? Yes, I'm asking about, do you have great support for Muslim-Christian dialogue among your colleagues and neighbors and people in the street, or is it?
I don't want to dominate.
Okay. So I did my PhD in Islamic law. And then later on, when I came to the United States in 2002 for research purposes, I realized that there should be something done between these two Abrahamic religions. So I tried to find a way to do something and have some classes from universities. At the same time, I was teaching and having some classes. So I learned something on dialogue issues between these two religions. And then began to say something or go some programs in United States and in Turkey right now. So I would like to say what Professor Brady asks. So we should do this. We should know from the very beginning, from the person, we should know from the very early source, which is the person. Imagination sometimes creates lots of problems. Muslims, if do not encounter with a Christian, and their understanding of Christianity would be different than what do you think, what do you know. At the same time, what I faced here in the United States, many Christians, they just hear from media and then create some understanding of Islam, which is not Islam, which is not true. And Muslims, they do not tell them like this. So it will be better to reduce the conflict, learn from each other. I really support this kind of idea, and I try to say always when it is possible.
In my experience, every summer I go back home, spend 3 months, and come back. This is the 10, 11 years of experience. And I share with them what I have been doing. And people and students are so excited to hear what's going on. And they are very supportive. And I take my students, J-term, almost the last 6 years, almost from 20 to, I see my students smiling here. Is one of my students in one of my classes, and we witness together how excited people are, how hospitable and loving and responding they are, aren't they? And and we see people how they excited, they cry. Some of the people are crying. People want dialogue. People want interaction and relationship. People are so good. People everywhere are so good. That's where we discover God and God's peace in every heart. I learned this, again, as I said, I learned about my faith and religion, what it is in the people. Nobody, even we are going through a very bad time. I am so, in my experience, sometime I was almost like shifting to a modern, very, very secular mindset, very critical, very skeptical, even, with cynicism, and rejecting and protesting. But I turned back and understood better that people are so good, are so peace-loving and peace-seeking. So that's what I see in my own experience. And so they are very supportive of dialogue, of relationship. And it might look a little awkward, strange to you that even those people, some people are judging, or some policies are judging as fundamentalists and conservative and etc. I am not supporting such approach. Even those people whom, the liberals are kind of demonizing, etc., or radicalizing them by judging them, they have that good, peaceful, loving spirit there. But we are just ignoring the situations that they are going through. We are ignoring. We don't have the patience to listen. They seek dialogue. They also support dialogue. That's what I have seen. Okay.
Yeah. There is a verse in the Quran which says, "We created all humanity with dignity." So as a person, we should understand how he describes himself or herself, because God creates everybody else with dignity. And also from the first month, from the very first experience, face-to-face, understanding, face-to-face learning creates a very correct understanding of each other. So I told you a couple of minutes ago, and imagination creates problem. And last year, Professor Brady, he visited my class in Turkey, and my students, they were asking questions, many questions. And the class, it was 1 and 30 minutes. It's a block class, but they kept Brady 2 hours in the class. They were asking questions because they would like to learn from the first hand. So learning from first hand reduce problem between these two major religion, between two major groups, between two major followers. Otherwise, we may say something about Christianity, which would not be the right one, and then you may something about Islam, which would be not right one. And then this creates some problems. I try to tell my colleagues this one, okay, if you would like to learn, you should face a Muslim. You should encounter and you should find a Christian. So insider information comes from the very first hand. So to do this, the dialogue is necessary.
My question in the back, yes. As he's coming up, I'm going to share my favorite moment teaching his class. I was explaining Lent to his students, and then I went on about how children give up candy for Lent. This was a totally foreign idea, and they were just enamored with this, and they giggled and laughed. Please, your question.
Yes, my name is Mohammed. I'm doing mechanical engineering at St. Thomas, my senior year. I'm taking world religion class right now. So most of my classmates, they want to ask us questions, but they're really shy. So let's ask. So what are the steps before al-jihad? In other words, who the best person can call for al-jihad right now at these days?
Okay. This is directed to me. Thank you. Okay, I will repeat. Who has the right to declare jihad, right? Who has the right? So in Islamic tradition, only the organization of state, the head of state, have this right. Person, they cannot declare. So jihad, also at the very beginning I told that jihad is not war. Okay? So maybe it's not clear. So there's a misunderstanding. War is war in Islam. War is harb. War is qital in the Quran. So you find lots of verses which tells qital, how qital should be done when it is necessary, how harb should be done. But jihad is a broader term which contains also warfare. But equalizing creates problem. Because intellectual jihad and jihad with property, jihad with selfish desires, when you equalize, then this go out. This meaning get lost. Because of this reason, who can declare jihad means that who can open war, right? So opening war is an issue of state. The leadership can do this. Person, they cannot do this. If a person does this, then it may create chaos, anarchy. So, and if you use the term in the level of war, jihad, I may say only the state leaders can do this in Islamic law. Okay. Then individuals, they may join or not. Okay, yeah.
One more question, our last question tonight. Thank you.
We've heard a lot about what I describe as the just war theory so far, and I was wondering if in your own interfaith dialogue you've come across any differences between just war theory in Islam and that of
Good. So the question is comparing the just war theory in Islam and Christianity.
So just war theory is a term which was born in Christian tradition. So to translate or to tell something about other religion with the term of Christianity gives some false impression to the people, to the listeners, to the Christians. So just war theory and jihad is closer meaning to just war theory, but it is not just war. Because And in Islamic tradition, peace is the main issue. Okay? Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he tried to establish peace in his whole life. But when it is necessary, he joined war. Okay? So at the center, there is peace. And then if it is necessary, then they should go with legitimate reasons to war. So this part, the second part, may have some relationship to the just war, but it is not equal, again, jihad and just war theory. There is some similarities.
The Quran is, I think, very explicit on the purpose of declaring war. It is said that jihad is more comprehensive, including all peaceful efforts of reform, of peacemaking, calling, preaching, teaching, giving, sharing, economic, political, social. That's jihad. But as the last resort, as it was said, it is a war, actual war. Actual warfare is allowed in the Quran only when there is a war against the religion of a people, attacking the religious liberty, religious freedom, or religious practice, religion of a people. When religion of the people is attacked, there is a permission to stop that aggression. Stopping that aggression, that hostility, that attempt to destroy religion, there is this reason to defend. Second thing is, when a people are expelled forcefully, unrighteously, unjustly from their homes and lands, that's the second reason that is mentioned in the Quran. So the war can only be legitimate and allowed when it is in the path of God. This is in the path, in the cause of God. And that means when we open it, Allah justifies. Path of God means only justice. That means protecting and preserving human beings, human rights, freedom of religion and reason and property and soul and generation. It's all based on what Allah, God, stands for, justice. So, no forcing on religion, no forcing people to expel. These are the main things, and this is what God's justice stands for.
Thank you. For concluding remarks, first of all, thank you for your patience and your attention and your very good questions. Greatly appreciated. Secondly, I'd like to publicly apologize to my friend Ishmael because I messed up his slide. It was very confusing for me how to do that. Thirdly, let us thank our panelists once again for their work. And fourthly, our wish is that you all go in peace this evening. Thank you. Thank you.